Live on DAZN Worldwide, May 2nd and 3rd, Garcia versus Romero and Canelo versus Skull. Friday from 6 p.m. Eastern, Garcia returns in a history-making Times Square takeover. 24 hours later, Saturday from 7 p.m. Eastern, King Canelo faces undefeated Skull for the undisputed crown. May 2nd and 3rd, a knockout weekend of boxing. Pick one or go all in for only $90, exclusively on DAZN. Buy now at DAZN.com/boxing.
Warning, each episode of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast, will contain descriptions of acts of violence or of a sexual nature and are for people that are 18 years or older. Heed my warning, people. I do not get the facts of these cases off the internet or from some television show. These facts I'm retelling were presented to me by the victims of the crime or the perpetrators who committed the crimes. My descriptions of the crime scenes are what I saw with my own two eyes. If you are going to get offended, turn this podcast off now. Thank you. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast. And as always, I'm your host, Woody Overton. And before we get started on the conclusion of the Screwdriver Red series, which is titled Murder Bayou, I want to give a shout out to one of the most amazing podcasts you'll ever listen to. It. You know, I don't listen to a lot of true crime podcasts, or I hadn't in the past. I'm starting to more and more now because I've been introduced to so many great people. But one of the first ones I listened to is a show called Dark Poutine, so Poutine, and its host is Mike Brown and then Scott Hemingway, and they're from Canada, y'all. And it is super duper. The show is. It's more than just true crime. They do cover some great crimes, but they have some episodes that are just almost bizarre with the true crime. So it's a breakaway from your normal just true crime and the bantering back and forth. They don't do it like that, right? Some of the back and forth banter between hosts and things I listen to on these podcasts, I don't really get it. Well, I get Mike and Scott's, and they flow well together. It's very well researched and produced. And if you don't find something interesting in Dark Poutine, well, maybe you need to get your temperature checked. Because I had the privilege of meeting both Mike and Scott and taking a picture with them this past weekend at CrimeCon 2019 in New Orleans. But I had been speaking with Mike before CrimeCon, and we've become friends on Facebook, et cetera. And he's just such a great guy and very personable and always interacts with his fans. And, you know, he's given us some tips, being the new kids on the block. And I just really, really want to give Dark Poutine and Mike and Scott a shout out. Y'all please go and listen to them, and I promise you, you're going to find something that you love. I mean, it's just really well done, and they're having mad success in Canada and across the world, right? And so just, you couldn't ask for two better guys. You couldn't ask for a better show, better produced and quality and entertaining as it gets. And then they play on the Canadian things also. Even the name of the show itself, Dark Poutine, is just strictly pure Canadian. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Mike and Scott of Dark Poutine.
Hello there. My name is Mike Brown, creator and host of the Dark Poutine podcast. With me, as usual, is my good friend and co-host, Scott Hemingway. Say hello, Scott.
Hello, Scott.
Dark Poutine is not for the faint of heart or squeamish. We're two ordinary Canadians who chat mostly about true crime in Canada and our dark history. Subscribe to Dark Poutine through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your on-demand audio. And join us weekly to get your fill of Dark Poutine.
All right, so there you have it from Dark Poutine. Y'all go and subscribe and listen, say hi to him on their Facebook pages or whatever social media you want to use. And I promise you, he'll say hi. Actually, both Mike and Scott joined our real life, real crime friends, fans, and crew weeks ago and introduced themselves to the group. And I know we have a ton of listeners that are listening to them now because of that interaction alone. So just great guys, great show. And Mike and Scott, I really appreciate y'all. And y'all look for links to them on our social media starting this week. And I'm even going to post a picture I got to take with them at CrimeCon. Great guys. We really appreciate Dark Poutine. So let's get started. This week's episode in the conclusion of the Screwdriver Red series. The episode is titled Murder Bayou. When I left you last, the jury had just retired to try to reach a verdict in the Mark Lewis trial. And he was on trial for second-degree murder for the killing of little, sweet, young Kaitlyn Aydell. And the jury retires, and we're sitting in the courtroom on pins and needles. Now, let me back up for a second. Okay, when I started, my very first day after being promoted to detective, I've mentioned this in the past episode, I stayed after work. And my desk was in the back office. And in that office, there were two filing cabinets that said murder on them in cold case. And so I stayed after work almost every day, especially the first week. And I started digging through the cold case files. And one of the oldest ones I found was from 1993. And it was a case of a lady who had been brutally murdered in the Mormon church parking lot in Denham Springs, Louisiana. And like I said, in 1993. Now, she had been shot 3 times in the back. And her name was Janet Benoit. Benoit. And she didn't go down without a fight. When the scene was processed, they were able to collect strawberry blonde hairs and some DNA samples from her hands. So she fought her attacker viciously. And evidently, he didn't appreciate it too much because he shot her. And he didn't shoot her face to face. He shot her 3 times in the back. Would assume that means she was running away, probably after she beat his ass and yanked the hairs out of his head. And he's a little bitch. So what does he do? He shoots her in the back 3 times and leaves her dead in the parking lot. I had mentioned this in the first episode of the Screwdriver Red series, but I didn't tell you I had read the case personally. The case was worked, and it was worked properly, but everything led to a dead end. No pun intended. Ultimately, the case went cold. I mean, it went frozen, right, for 16 years. So the day of Kaitlyn Aydell's trial, the day that the jury went out, my phone rang, and it was Detective Ben Ballard. Now, y'all have to remember at this time, I'd already transferred to the Louisiana State Police as a criminal investigator out of headquarters in Baton Rouge. So Ben and I had worked on Kaitlyn Aydell's case hand in hand, and I had been there for the couple of days for the trial. So he calls me that morning. He said, "Dude, you're going to shit." And I'm just like, "What, man? What?" He said, you're never going to believe whose DNA came back and we're going to clear a cold case off of it. I said, who, man? Who? And he said, fucking Mark Lewis. He said, Screwdriver Red's DNA came back to a prostitute that was murdered in 1993 in the Mormon church parking lot in Denham Springs. And I told him, I said, was her name Benoit, Janet Benoit? He said, yep. I said, dude, I read that case years ago when it first came into the detective. I said, it's the first cold case I ever read. And so I knew what it was, right? And I said, I can't fucking believe it. I said, I knew Mark Lewis was good for way more than one killing. I just didn't think we had caught him. And so I had a lot of mixed emotions that day. I'm so excited about it. I really want to get a jab in on this punk fucker. And once the jury goes out and retires, I go in, I sit up on where the court reporter area, it's just to the left and a little bit higher than where Mark Lewis was sitting at the defense table. And the bailiff let him meet with his daughter, talk to his daughter, who was one of the last ones that testified in the case. And they had a little whisper visitation session, which I didn't really agree with because Mr. Net didn't get to visit with Kaitlyn anymore, right? You know, fuck him. I'm sorry for his daughter, but he's just a monster. So I just was waiting. And the visitation with the daughter stopped. Finally, the daughter went away. And so I'm literally 3 feet from him. And I'm sitting on a higher level. It's like a step up to where the table where I was. And I'm looking across the courtroom where he's facing the front of the courtroom, sitting at his defense table. And I said, hey, Mark. And he turned his head and looked at me, and he looked back straight. And I used a line from the movie The Patriot with Mel Gibson that always stuck with me. In that movie, when Mel Gibson's son gets killed during the new war that's breaking out, and he was this great hero in the Indian Wars, but he killed a lot of people, right? But he says, I always feared the sins of my youth would come back to haunt me. And so I used that on Lewis. I said, hey, Mark, I said, have you ever thought maybe that the sins of your youth would come back to haunt you? And he kind of turned and looked at me again like I was stupid. And I said, Janet Benoit, bitch. And I'm kind of whispering it. And his eyes went fucking like saucers. Big eyes, white. And then he's just, he's kind of a pale dude anyway, but you could see the color drain out of his face. And he turned around and he jerked his head back around in the front. I said, that's right, bitch. I said, we're going to put your ass to death. I said, I know that Janet Benoit's not going to be the first one that you killed, but we got your DNA and you're fucked. And I said, we're not going to stop till we pin all your murders on you. And he just wouldn't even look at me, wouldn't say anything. And his attorney walked back up and then he said, tell him to stop talking to me. And McKee said, why are you talking to my client? I said, I wasn't talking to your client. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. He said, well, he just said you were talking to him. I said, well, fuck him. I'm not talking to him. And so it's not like Lewis could go file a complaint on me saying that I told him that we had him tied to DNA to the murder of Janet Benoit, right? I mean, that's bringing attention to himself, and he didn't want to shake it up, and he didn't really know what we had or didn't have. So continuing with the story, I just had to fuck with him a little bit, spread the love. The jury was out for about 3 hours. Once they came back out and got some more instructions, and then they went back in and they came back out and they had a verdict. And the verdict was unanimous, guilty of second-degree murder. All 12 members of the jury, they were polled. They said, yes, guilty, 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 times 12. And Lewis just didn't even do anything. He just didn't hang his head. He didn't look at the jury. He just kind of stood there. Now, being found guilty, second-degree murder, he's automatically going to get life in prison without the possibility of parole. So as soon as they say guilty, the bailiffs take him into custody. The deputies handcuff him because now you don't have to not have him handcuffed in front of the jury. It's not going to influence him one way or another. So they immediately snatched him up and cuffed him. And when he was leaving, I said, sins of your youth, Mark, sins of your youth. And he just cut evil eyes at me, right? So I was really, really, really emotional when they came back and said guilty. there were cries in the courtroom, and I'll never forget this. And I almost got teared up about it. And I was so fired up that we'd gotten justice for Kaitlyn. And Ben Ballard had become really close with Miss Benoit, and he was sitting with her on the bench, sitting beside her, holding her hand when they read the verdict. And everybody started crying. And Ben teared up a little bit himself too. I mean, it's rightfully so. I mean, it's an emotional deal. And in cases like this, you make that connection with the family, and it's like they become your family. And I think this was Ben's first big case like that. And I knew he had that connection with Miss Benoit and the rest of the family. And I mean, it was emotional for everybody, but I was so proud of the work that he had done, and just a class act. And sitting with Miss Benoit and holding her hand while the verdict comes back, it goes to show what kind of character Ben Ballard has as a human being and as a detective.
Did you know there's an online cannabis company that ships federally legal THC right to your door? And they found a way to combine THC with carefully selected functional ingredients to target nearly every mood and health concern you can think of. I'm talking about Mood.com's incredible line of functional gummies. And you can get 20% off your first order at Mood.com with promo code RLRC. Forget one-size-fits-all supplements that only get you high. Mood's functional gummies are optimized to kick in as little as 15 minutes and take you to the mood that you're looking for. Whether that's Mind Magic gummies for deep work and creativity, PMS support to ease cramps and balance mood swings, or their sexual euphoria gummies to help you feel ready for action and turn every touch into a full body experience. Look, y'all, you know I have trouble sleeping. I take the Sleepy Time gummy. I take a quarter of one before I go to sleep, and I sleep hard all night long. Never even move, wake up feeling fresh as a daisy. So listen, you can find gummies to just get you high pretty much anywhere these days. But Mood's functional gummies combine premium federal legal THC with targeted botanicals to help you get into that perfect mood, usually in as little as 15 minutes. And everything ships discreetly right to your door. No dispensary lines, no awkward conversations, just better days and nights delivered to your doorstep. Best of all, not only is every Mood product backed by a 100-day satisfaction guarantee, but as I mentioned, listeners get 20% off their first order with code RLRC. So head to Mood.com, find the functional gummy that matches exactly what you're looking for, and let Mood help you discover your perfect mood. And don't forget to use promo code RLRC when you check out to save 20% on your first order. Women, have you ever had one of those days where everything just feels off? Like you're stuck in the middle of a mystery and you can't solve it? Your energy's crashing, your mood's swinging like a suspect in an interrogation room, and no matter what you do, nothing adds up. Well, Cindy has been there, and sometimes the real culprit is hiding in the shadows, is hormonal imbalance. Here's a twist. More than 1,000 hormone disruptors are living rent-free in our world, lurking in our food, our air, even our skincare. And when hormones go haywire, it can feel like you're trapped in your own personal true crime story, especially during premenopause or menopause. But here's the good news. This is the one case you can crack with Hormone Harmony by Happy Mammoth. All you need to do is take their free 2-minute quiz. You'll answer a few simple questions. Just like that, you'll get a personalized recommendation to help bring your hormones back into balance. No long investigation required. What I love is that Hormone Harmony is made with adaptogens, natural science-backed herbal extracts that help your body adapt to stress and hormonal changes, whether it's PMS, hot flashes, brain fog, or sleepless nights. This product is designed to help you feel like you again. Over 40,000 glowing reviews don't lie, and neither do the results. 86% of women say they started losing weight. 77% say their mood improved. And the biggest win, 100% say they feel like themselves again. For a limited time, you can get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com. Just use the code RLRC at checkout. That's happymammoth.com, code RLRC for 15% off today.
So we'll fast forward a little bit. All right. They can't charge. They could have, but they didn't charge Mark Lewis with Janet Benoit's murder immediately. Okay. I told you about Stan Carpenter, the supervisor of the detectives, and he's smart. And yes, the DNA in her hands, Janet Benoit's hands, and his hairs in her hands, and the fact that she fought him, that's really, really good evidence, and probably would have been more than enough for a conviction. But Stan's like, you know what? Fuck it. We don't have to rush it because he's already gone to prison. They shipping his ass to Angola right now. I mean, he's not going to get out. He's not going to beat anything on Kaitlyn's case on appeals. So we have time to work it. Ben Ballard, and I think Detective Ben Bourgeois, y'all, who's now, Bourgeois is the chief of detectives for the sheriff's office now in Livingston. And he is a jam up guy, a great investigator. And we worked the street together, and he went to the detectives, and I came to detectives after him. We worked together for many years. And not only that, we were very good, close personal friends, and we hunted and fished together and did things together with our families on our days off. So Ben's super smart. They took their time and they worked it. And I don't know all the details, but let me tell you what I do know is they found somehow, through great investigative work, they found the pistol that Mark Lewis shot Janet Benoit with. Mark Lewis had given the pistol Colt 38 Special. Remember, I told you the bullets were able to be matched. That Patrick Lane matched the bullets from Janet Benoit's body to a Colt 38 Special. Well, Ben Ballard and Ben Bourgeois worked it, and somehow they were able to develop sources that told him that Mark Lewis had given him a pistol years before. And the guy had it. He had it in the top of his closet tucked away. And it turned out the fucking pistol was Mark Lewis's mama's pistol. Originally, she had bought it. And they were able to get the pistol and send it to the crime lab. And Patrick Lane positively 1,000% identified that as the pistol that murdered Janet Benoit. So they don't stop there. They have everything up, right? They have the ballistics, they have the DNA, etc. And they bring him in and they set him up. They showed him pictures of Janet Benoit. Said, "Have you ever met her?" He says, "Nope." And then they roll out the evidence they have. Okay, well, fuck you. You're done. Not only have you met her, she whooped your ass basically in the parking lot. You yanks the hair out of your head and you shoot her in the back 3 times. And so he then confesses. Now think about this. And I think about this every time I think about Mark Lewis. Why does he confess? I firmly believe in my heart of hearts he confesses because he already knew. I mean, I already told him we had the DNA, right? And then Ben worked the case for so good and so long, and they are able to bring him in, get him to deny it, and then they show him the evidence they actually have, which he knew I wasn't full of shit now, lying about the DNA, and he's confronted with the gun and the fact that they have it. He immediately confesses. Why? I'm telling you, it's because he has more bodies on him. Or that's cop talk for, I know he's done more murders. In his mind, if he thinks, oh, fuck, I'll hurry up and confess to it and they'll leave me alone and they won't look at me anymore, right? Because now I'm going to have 2 life sentences. And hopefully they won't find out about whomever else it is that he murdered or raped or whatever over his time as a criminal or his adult life. You cannot tell me that he killed Benoit in 1993. Then less than 2 years later, he abducts the girl with the screwdriver and he would have killed her too had she not escaped. And then he gets out and he has some dormant years before he murdered Kaitlyn, and fuck that, he didn't stop. So, of course, they were looking at him for every kind of cold case they can. Now, when we get his DNA, it's put into the CODIS database, which is the nationwide database. Every criminal, or now most states are like Louisiana, they have, if you're arrested for any type of sexual crime or crime of violence, they swab you automatically and put you into that database. But I think probably a lot of his victims would have been before DNA was real prevalent. And I'm sure a lot of his victims would have been a high-risk lifestyle like Janet Benoit. So who knows? In a lot of the cases, DNA may not even been issued to be collected at that time. Or the DNA was so degraded it couldn't be used. But now with advances in DNA and all this genealogy DNA that's being done where, they can tell who you are by your sister, your mama, or whomever, getting into these databases. And I think as that grows and becomes more acceptable that these databases are used by law enforcement to find any kind of relative match, shit. You hadn't heard the last Mark Lewis. You can believe that. I promise you, they're going to get him on something else before it's done. But fuck him. He's in Angola. He's where he needs to be. 2 life sentences, and he's never getting out. Now, let's take it a step further. They have a program now where victims, families, members, and offenders can meet. But they have it in Louisiana. They have it in some other states also. And Miss Benoit, God bless her, she actually took part of the program, and she went to meet Mark Lewis at Angola. Now, it's not like I want to wake up in one day and go meet the killer of my daughter, right? So it's like a screening process, and he has to be prepared, and they have to prepare her. So it's a lengthy thing that leads up to it. But the gist of it is she's a very brave lady, and she went in and she met him. And this is why I say that in the descriptions of the episodes that he victimized people as recently as 2018, where he tried to victimize Miss Benoit in this meeting. So they go in, they have the meeting in San Angola, and there's the counselors in the room. And Lewis comes in, he's his cocky self, and she just asked him why. Tell me what happened. I want to know exactly what happened. She said, how did you get her to your house? And he said, I offered her a snack. And she said, well, what'd you offer her? And he said, like peanut butter and jelly. And Miss Benoit knew that Kaitlyn didn't even like that, right? She was like, I know he's fucking lying. She didn't say fucking. She doesn't curse like that, but she said, I knew he was lying because she didn't even like that. She said, but at least he was talking and I want to hear. But I told her, she said, no, that's not true. And he ends up saying that he called her over to get high on drugs. Now, that to me is victimization. Okay. He's trying to hurt her in any way that he can. And by degrading Kaitlyn, saying she was going over to do dope with him, that is a fucking load of bullshit. Okay. Nothing, no proof, no anything that Kaitlyn ever even thought about drugs. I mean, I would bet my life on it that she didn't. She truly was a sweet, innocent girl. Anyway, he tried to say that's what it was. And then he said that he choked her to death from behind. He didn't say that he tried to rape her or whatever, but that's what happened, y'all. I mean, I think he got her over there. He'd been masturbating and porn all day. He had been thinking about her for 2 years since he looked up her shorts, and he'd been trying to groom her, trying to set up this thing. And in his mind, he had this fantasy that she was going to come over there and he's going to be this smooth player and he was going to have sex with her, right? So, but he gets over there, and I don't know how he got her in the back guest bedroom, but when he does, sugar turns to shit, and his fantasy doesn't become reality because Kaitlyn truly is a sweetheart, young, innocent girl. She wasn't going to do it. She wasn't going to have sex with him like he thought she was. And so when she says no, and I'm guessing he unzipped her pants and she resisted, and he panicked like a little bitch and he choked her to death. And then he panics again and goes and disposes of her body. But the fact that Mr. Netwin did this is really important. I'm sure it's important for her on personal levels to try to get some type of closure, but it's really important from a legal standpoint because it's the first time Lewis ever admitted that he killed Kaitlyn. So when you do that and you have witnesses to it, you can't appeal. There's not going to be these 12 years of appeals, him saying he's innocent, and us as the cops said we got it wrong. So Mr. Net really is a warrior in my mind. First of all, to be tough enough to sit down with that piece of shit and look him in the eye and then listen to him lie about Kaitlyn and degrade her character or whatever. But Mr. Net knew Kaitlyn's heart. She knew she wasn't into drugs, and she knew she's dealing with a monster in Lewis, right? She absolutely stopped any chance of him ever getting out of prison for Kaitlyn's murder by getting him to say that he choked her to death. Now, Lewis's problem is he's a narcissistic, psychopathic piece of shit, and I'm sure that he got much pleasure out of sitting across from Mr. Net and saying those degrading things about Kaitlyn and trying to victimize Mr. Net again. But fuck you, Lewis. Joke's on you. When you said you strangled her to death and from behind, you just sealed your fate forever. So couple that with the fact that he pled out to murdering Janet Benoit, then he's never going to get out of prison, and he's going to die in prison. And that's where he deserves to be. And that's what deserves to happen to him. But I want to say this. We do the Sphincter scale, and on a rating scale of assholes, from one asshole being a person who should barely be on probation probably, to 10 being the worst of the worst. And then we have our ultimate tier, murder by you, which murder by you means you should get the death penalty. You shouldn't be breathing. You don't even deserve to live. Mark Lewis is murder by you all the way, times infinity. And I want to add this. Now, I know somebody up in Angola has heard about Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast by now. And even though they don't have the internet and they don't have the ability to listen technically to podcasts, etc., I know that they have inmates in there that have cell phones, that have wireless service, that have internet service. Okay. That's a big deal now. When I worked in corrections 30 years ago, we didn't have cell phones. So it wasn't a deal about prisoners smuggling in cell phones, whether it's through paying off guards to bring it in or family members or getting it through visitation, however they're getting it. They have it. And it's a really big deal now. Think about it. You're doing life in prison. If you could have a cell phone and you didn't have to wait in line on a payphone and call your family members to collect, plus you can search the internet for porn or whatever it is you want to search for. I mean, it's a big deal. So, hey, fellows up there at Angola, whoever it is that's listening to me right now, I would like to request that you identify Mark Lewis, Screwdriver Red. Now, remember, he's a smooth character, and I'm pretty sure he's chumming up whoever and buddying up to him. But the deal is, I know the convict code, and that is, if you're a rapist or a child molester or a child murderer, then the convict code is you get dealt with. And I don't want Mark Lewis to slide his way through on his charm and his wit. I want you to know that he murdered a sweet baby, innocent girl because he tried to rape her and she wouldn't do it. He is a baby murderer. And I know in the convict code, there's nothing worse than that. So y'all, Mark Lewis, Mark Sterling Lewis, Screwdriver Red, he's up there. He's on the farm right now. That's what they call Louisiana State Penitentiary, y'all. It's over 5,000 acres, and they hard labor. They make them raise their own food and everything else. So y'all, whoever's listening, spread the word about Mark Lewis and show him some love from the convict code.
Live on DAZN Worldwide, May 2nd and 3rd, Garcia versus Romero and Canelo versus Skull. Friday from 6 p.m. Eastern, Garcia returns in a history-making Times Square takeover. 24 hours later, Saturday from 7 p.m. Eastern, King Canelo faces undefeated Skull for the undisputed crown. May 2nd and 3rd, a knockout weekend of boxing. Pick one or go all in for only $90, exclusively on DAZN. Buy now at DAZN.com/boxing.
And when you do it, tell him Woody from Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast, sends his love. I'm going to conclude that, and we'll conclude this series. And y'all know it was a long series, but it's a lot of information, and I wanted to take my time and try to do it right and in a respectful way for the family and the victims. And I got a message yesterday from Kayla Bourgeois, who was Kaitlyn's best friend. And she was also the last person to speak to her that day before Mark Lewis called her over and murdered her. Remember, she called and said, "Hey, we can't talk right now. I'll call you back." And then Kayla called her back and she didn't answer. Kayla said she wants to thank me and that it was hard to hear, but that I did a good job with it and I told the truth, and she really appreciated it. And she also sent me some pictures of her and Kaitlyn. I mean, they were literally best friends, y'all, from like the time they were little. And so she sent me a collage of pictures of her and Kaitlyn together. And then, you know, she said, after all these years, it may brought a tear to my eye. So Kayla, I appreciate that. And thanks for sending it, and thanks for the words, because I thought about doing this episode for a long time. It's just tough. It's just like it was yesterday. Anyway, thank y'all for listening. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope you enjoyed the series. Now, this is actually going to conclude the first season of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast. So everything we've done up until now is going to be included in season 1. And so next week, we're going to be starting season 2. And with that, we're going to have a lot of new stuff, new audio, new formats, more information, etc. And we'll get to that. We'll surprise y'all with a lot of it. But I want to thank y'all, each and every one of you, for listening. And it means a lot to me. The fan support has been amazing. We're over 93,000 downloads, y'all, in just over 3 months. And it's just amazing. It means the world to us. So I want to say thank you to our patron members. You're absolutely fantastic, and we love you. And I want to say a couple names real quick, and then later on this week, I'm going to be putting out an episode. It's not about crime, but it's going to be explaining some things about the show and what changes we're going to be making, and listing all the patrons on it, etc. But today, I want to tell you about a really, really cool lady that I owe an apology to, and her name is Jen Sawicki. Okay, now Jen came up to me at CrimeCon this weekend in New Orleans and introduced herself along with her friend Rika, and they're both have been patron members since we started Patreon. And y'all know that I give a shout out to patron members at least once a month, right? Somehow I left Jen out of it. And when she told me, she said, "But you never said my name." And her and Rika worked together. She was like, you said Rika's name X amount of times and whatever. I said, "I don't believe that." I said, I just absolutely don't believe that I missed it. I said, "Maybe, did you not have your last name on there?" I said, "Cause I don't remember the last name." And she said, No, you just didn't say it. I said, "Maybe I said Jen and I don't have your last name." She said, "No." I said, "I promise you, Jen." I mean, I can almost certain that I said it. So the next day in the hotel room, I go back and I listen to every episode since Jen Sawicki became a patron member. And guess what? She was right. I never said her name. So Jen has a daughter named Cora, and she is a fan also. So I want to give the biggest, fattest, longest shout out ever to my new dear friend, Jen Sawicki, who is from the Phoenix, Arizona area, and her daughter, Cora. I love y'all. Jen, you are a blast. We had so much fun at CrimeCon. You have a great spirit and great personality. And guess what, y'all? Jen and Rika were my first autographs I ever signed. So that was kind of cool. And it was also kind of cool just people coming up and say, hey, we're a fan. And yeah, I mean, it just blew my mind. But Jen, I apologize for not having ever acknowledged you as a patron member. I'm doing it now. I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you for backing us, supporting us. And we had so much fun with y'all at CrimeCon, and we're looking forward to seeing you again. And this week, the episode that I'm going to do about the new show announcements, etc., Jen and Rika will actually help us come up with some new names for patron stuff, etc. And I'm going to explain that in the episodes, but they were just fantastic. Love them. And we'll never forget them. So, and real quick, 3 more patron members that joined this week. Meg Mihaly. It's Mihaly. Meg, I really appreciate you, and I thank you so much. You're awesome. And then y'all, Shayla Bourgeois, who was Kaitlyn's best friend, and she's the one that sent me the comment yesterday about I did Kaitlyn's story a proper telling, I guess you would say, and it really meant the world to me. And on top of that, she joined as a patron member. So Shayla, really, really appreciate you. And you know that I messaged you yesterday in depth, and your words of kindness meant a lot to me, and I really appreciate you. And thank you so much for becoming a patron member. You're awesome. I really appreciate it. And y'all, we have another lady we met at CrimeCon, Miss Roxana Camara Musa, M-U-S-A, and she's from South Carolina. And what a blast she was also. And she joined as patron. And Roxana, thank you for doing that and supporting us through Patreon. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your personality and the fun that we had in New Orleans. You're awesome, and I love you. So I'm not going to do a bunch of more shout outs and announcements today because I'm putting out that episode later this week. And I want you to know that Real Life, Real Crime is killing it. We made so many great connections with the top famous podcasts in New Orleans, and we're going to be doing promos with a lot of them. But it was a great weekend, and I'll discuss it further in the episode I'm going to put out later this week. And we've redesigned our patron tiers, and I'm going to be listening to that this week. You should check it out. It's going to be funny. These ladies really came up with some great ideas. And I'm going to tell you about all the positive changes that are coming. So, but I love and appreciate each and every one of you. If you're not a patron member, I don't care. That I love you just as much. And I would ask that you subscribe or like and share and keep helping us grow. That's just as important to me as anything else. So I love and appreciate each and every one of you. Y'all, we're on all the social media, YouTube, and 3 different Facebook pages, including the Real Life, Real Crime Friends, Fans, and Crew, which passed over 1,000 members last week. And if you're not a member of that crew, send our Dream Team moderators a request and they'll get you approved. I'm telling you, you won't regret it. There's so much info on there, including the other podcasts I've recommended. Their hosts have joined our group, and it's just a lot of stuff. And if you like Real Life, Real Crime, you're going to love that group. And y'all, our Lanyap page is killer. We have a Dream Team moderator, Ryan Horan, who goes on there and posts live videos, and he's done some contests and stuff. He'll post videos talking about Real Life, Real Crime, and while he's doing his garden, etc. We call him Promo Man. Ryan, I really appreciate you doing that. But y'all check that out. Join that group. It's a lot of fun stuff, and we swap things. And Anthony Parliament, I got you something coming. And Nicole Boyd, a fan from Australia, brought us a package and some gifts in, and we're going to do a video of that and be posting it on there later today. So anyway, I love y'all. Appreciate you. And as long as you're listening, I'll lay down the tracks. And until next time, don't let me catch you down on Murder Bayou.
I don't want no sugar in my coffee. It make me mean, Lord. It make me mean. I don't want no sugar in my coffee. It make me mean, Lord. It make me mean.
Okay, y'all, I'm going to run a promo for Rusty Hinges, the podcast. Check it out.
The world can be a mysterious place. It can also be a boring place, so let's focus on the mysterious. Rusty Hinges is a podcast that explores mysteries, hoaxes, natural phenomena, and weird history. Basically, anything that's a bit, well, hinky. Season 1 topics include the tale of Clarence Roberts, a man who died more than once. And then there is the maybe kidnapping of June Robles, the sun that danced in the sky over Portugal, and an unsolved murder on the high seas. Rusty Hinges is generally skeptical, but never dismissive. Well, usually not dismissive. You can find Rusty Hinges on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. That's Rusty Hinges. R-U-S-T. You know what? I have faith in your spelling abilities, so go and subscribe to Rusty Hinges and maybe you'll solve a mystery. Probably not, but, you never know.
And there you have it, Rusty Hinges. Y'all give them a listen and go to their page and let them know that Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast sent you. And now y'all, one more promo. The podcast Bad in the Boondocks, and their hosts reached out to me, and they are a part of our private group now, and they are from South Carolina, and they're interesting. Give them a listen. But here is the promo for Bad in the Boondocks.
Hey, I'm Stan.
And I'm Drew, and we are your hosts of Bad in the Boondocks.
Bad in the Boondocks is a fresh take on true crime podcast.
We are a father and son team from way back in the sticks of South Carolina.
Yeah, in a town of less than 500, and we have a shared passion for all things true crime. So, every Saturday we get together and swap stories about a true crime event.
We try and find the most twisted and vile losers of our human race. Now, you won't hear a lot of endless banter on Bad in the Boondocks.
But what you will hear is all the unedited facts on the cases we choose, no matter how gory or troublesome they are. And you'll hear it all with a unique southern flair.
And along the way, you'll hear just the right amount of discussion and jokes to keep you and us from completely losing your mind. You can find us on all the major podcast platforms like iTunes, Google, Stitcher, Himalaya, and CastBox, or just go to badintheboondocks.com and download all of our episodes there.
So, come on down to the Boondocks and get your redneck on with us. We promise, you'll have a good time.
All right, that's Bad in the Boondocks, y'all. Give them a listen and go to their Facebook page or social media and let them know that Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast sent you. Thank you, and until next week. Bye.
Live on DAZN Worldwide, May 2nd and 3rd, Garcia versus Romero and Canelo versus Skull. Friday from 6 p.m. Eastern, Garcia returns in a history-making Times Square takeover. 24 hours later, Saturday from 7 p.m. Eastern, King Canelo faces undefeated Skull for the undisputed crown. May 2nd and 3rd, a knockout weekend of boxing. Pick one or go all in for only $90, exclusively on DAZN. Buy now at DAZN.com/boxing.